Say the thing you're afraid to say.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the first trailer for The Last of Us Season 2. We are so excited to break every episode of this show down for you next year, so let's get started with this trailer. But first, I just want to say something. Please, in the comments, avoid spoilers for the game, the game The Last of Us 2. We were very careful all through our first season coverage to not give away anything that happens in the game, and this trailer is going to be spoiler-free, like some light spoilers about some themes. We're not going to talk about events. If you know the game, then you got to experience this for the first time without spoilers, hopefully, so please don't spoil it for anyone else.
She says, I'm one behind, so no spoilers.
So the trailer begins with a timer, specifically an egg timer, as Catherine O'Hara's therapist character begins a therapy session with Joel. So egg timers played a big role in The Last of Us Season 1. In the first episode, we saw clocks and timers figure prominently in the first sequence before the world, goes to hell on September 26th, like today. The timers were symbolic of time running out, and specifically of Joel's time running out as a father. The fact that Sarah buys a watch for him that is then broken is symbolic of Joel distancing himself from humanity. So here we see that Joel is back on a clock that monitors time, but that time is limited and running out. So like I said, the great Catherine O'Hara seems to be playing a therapist. Now a lot of you know her from Home Alone, Schitt's Creek, and of course Beetlejuice. Now my guess is she's going to get Joel to confess what he did at the end of Season 1. In the game, Joel confesses all of this to his brother Tommy.
Wait, what do you mean what happens in Season 1?
Well, Season 1 of The Last of Us ends with Joel killing the doctors who were holding Ellie hostage to save her life. And you'll remember that likely ended any chance of permanently curing the cordyceps fungus. But, most importantly, he lied to Ellie and told her that there was no cure.
The doctors, they couldn't make any of it work. They've stopped looking for a cure.
Ellie seemed suspicious, but she let it go and they moved on. But I'm guessing that the show might now use Catherine O'Hara's character to be that person who Joel can unload that weight from his shoulders. And then we see the Jackson, Wyoming settlement that we first saw in Season 1. Just a few things to note here. Look how tall the walls are. Now these are to keep the clickers out. We also see various guards posted around the walls, and this is our first real look at like a true peaceful community since the end of the world happened. Now of course we began the first season in Boston, but Boston was a police state. Jackson is basically run like a utopia communist society.
Big communists, big communists.
Now later though, we do see a horde of clickers rushing at this wall, but more on them later. Around Jackson, we also see people riding on horses, and we see that they're still flying the American flag. So even though they've adopted less of a capitalist and more of a socialist communist society, we see that they still follow the Constitution, say the Pledge of Allegiance, and they consider themselves Americans. Now this is interesting because FEDRA, the government agency that declared martial law in Boston and other cities, also flew the American flag, but for FEDRA, they used it more as a symbol of fascism, a way to indicate to people that they were in charge. In Jackson, a more idyllic community, it genuinely seems like people are flying the flag because they want to respect American ideals. And then we see Joel's mailbox where it says Miller. Now, this is showing us the evolution of the society. Not only does Joel have a house, but he also receives mail. So this is showing how the world, at least in this small haven of Jackson, is finally able to move on from the outbreak. Now appropriately, the song playing here is Pearl Jam's Future Days, because we're finally living in the future of society after the outbreak. We even see a Pearl Jam album in the room where Joel first grabs his guitar. Now, fans of The Last of Us 2 know this song immediately. It is the song that Joel teaches Ellie to sing and that she learns to play on the guitar. I'm going to avoid spoilers for the game, like I said, so I'm not going to say much more than that. I will say though that there was also a fun mini game where you could actually play your own chords, and there were some famous musicians who played their own songs when they streamed the game.
It's all right. Then tell me.
Now, in this room with the Pearl Jam album, we also see a Nirvana poster and a vinyl from the Nirvana album In Utero. So this is an actual vintage Nirvana poster. Had the world not ended, it probably would have been worth a lot of money. I should also note that Nirvana comes from the city of Seattle, which is the main setting of The Last of Us 2 that we'll talk about in just a bit. So playing the guitar is one thing that grounds Ellie to humanity in this post-apocalyptic world. It unites her with the people that she loves, like Joel and her girlfriend Danny. At the end of the game, her ability to play the guitar becomes limited, symbolizing her loss of connection to her own humanity. Now, in the game, the guitar is a Taylor 314 CE, but in these scenes, side by side, make it look like it's actually two different guitars. So these scenes are almost shot-for-shot remakes of the ones that we see in game. Now, this scene is so important in the game. It is where Joel and Ellie have a very important character connection. Again, I don't want to say much more than that because of spoilers, but I will say that this scene is an emotional crux for their story. And like many things in this story, everything seems to center around a guitar. We even saw this with Joel pre-apocalypse. His home was decorated with guitars or with music festival posters. Music is at the center and soul of his humanity, and he has passed that on to Ellie. Then we see lots of shots of the snowy mountains, which feature into an early level of the game, where you are playing as people who are trying to get back to Jackson ahead of clickers who have just arrived in the area. And then later, we see this same army of clickers through a pair of binoculars just a little bit later in the trailer. This is followed by several flashes of characters that are adapted from the game. It's actually shocking how accurate some of these people are to their video game counterparts. This is Dina, Ellie's girlfriend. We actually saw a glimpse of her here in Season 1. And this is Jesse, who is a close friend of Dina's, and of course, this is Tommy, Joel's brother, who we met in Season 1. Again, I could say a lot more about these characters, trying to stay spoiler-free. And finally, we have the most controversial character in the Last of Us series. This is Abby, the main antagonist of the game. Now, she has a connection to Joel from last season that makes her seek him out at the start of Last of Us 2. She works for a group known as the Washington Liberation Front. Now, they're a group of former Fireflies based in Seattle, which in the game is an incredibly well-designed level. The trailer sprinkles in various shots of Seattle, like this shot of the clickers banging on the window of a bus or a train, as Dina struggles to find her way out. Now, in Seattle, the WLF are also battling a religious cult known as the Seraphites. So this guy who's chained up is most likely Lev, a former Seraphite child soldier whom Abby saves and recruits after she is saved by them. Or this could just be a random Seraphite victim since he has these scars on his mouth. More on those scars in just a second. So this is Isaac Dixon, leader of the WLF, which is Abby's group. Jeffrey Wright plays him in the show, and he also played the role in the game with his voice and mocap. So this next shot is very strange and a departure from the game. Here it looks like Ellie is giving birth. Now in the game, Dina is the one who is pregnant and eventually gives birth. So maybe this show is switching this dynamic. Or we think this could be a nightmare that Ellie has after she kills an important character, but again, I can't say much more because of spoilers from the game. But hey guys, if you know, you know. Now this could also be a clip from a different scene that's early in the game that's a pretty major spoiler. Again, if you know, please don't spoil it for people in the comments, but I will say The Last of Us is one of the most brutal games ever, and I think this season, especially early in this season, is going to be really hard to watch. And then we see this graffiti that reads "Feel her love" with this inverted ichthus symbol with a kind of stake driven through its heart. Now, ancient Christians use this symbol of a fish as a marker at their gatherings, symbolic of when Jesus fed the thousands with loaves and fishes. Christians still use this symbol to this day on bumper stickers of their cars. Now, showing it inverted shows how the Seraphites are using a twisted kind of Christianity. Instead of their beliefs being steeped in grace, it's steeped in violence.
So wait, what is a Seraphite anyways?
Well, the Seraphites are a cult that was founded by a messianic woman that they called the Prophet, which is likely the her that this blood graffiti is referring to. They believed that the pandemic was a punishment for man's sins and the use of technology, so they became like Amish extremists. You can spot the Seraphites from these scars on their faces that look a lot like a Glaswegian smile or, you know, like Heath Ledger's Joker. So in the game, the Seraphites are having a full-on war with the Washington Liberation Front, with each side trying to conquer Seattle. The WLF also happened to kill their prophet, who was their leader, so this beef runs very, very deep. Now in this scene, it appears at first as if this is Ellie saving Joel from a horde of infected, but in fact, this is Abby saving Joel. And I love that at first glance, it's easy to confuse these two characters. In the game, Abby and Ellie are presented as two sides of the same coin. And check out how nasty this cordyceps fungus looks growing from this person's head. I love The Last of Us Season 1, but I could have used just a little bit more zombie action in the latter few episodes because it would have helped raise the stakes for the character drama that we were watching. Now I think this is the scene where Joel saves Abby before either of them realize that the two of them have a connection from their past. This is Tommy with his girlfriend Maria, who you'll remember runs Jackson, Wyoming. Now in the game, most of the Jackson, Wyoming scenes are presented in flashbacks, and I'm wondering if the show is actually going to present everything in a more linear timeline. This would allow the characters to get a little bit more fleshed out, and for new characters, like Catherine O'Hare's therapist, to be added into this story. Now then there are a series of action scenes with people riding horses and storming doorways and setting fires, and we actually think this is showing fighting between the WLF and the Seraphites. The reason being that the clickers in The Last of Us have extremely advanced hearing, so you can't roll up on them hard like this. Pretty much the only way to kill them is to be quiet and deadly. And this is Ellie's knife from Season 1 being cleaned in a sink. Now the knife also represents a part of Ellie's humanity, a part of herself that she's always trying to keep clean that can be used as a weapon, but it also has sentimental value for her. Now again, I don't want to give anything away about the game, but I will say that the game deals with themes of revenge, revenge, vengeance, and justice. Characters become consumed with rage at one another, and the same rage and lust for vengeance are also destroying society as a whole. In apocalyptic stories, it's never the zombies who are destroying humanity. It's always humanity who is destroying itself. The Last of Us 2 interrogates this impulse inside of all of us. Can we be a civilization that works together when we become so consumed with hate and rage? Here we see Ellie's tattoo on her right arm, just like she gets the tattoo in the game. Now, this tattoo is to cover up the bite mark that's on her arm. Otherwise, she would have to explain to people for her entire life that, wait, I'm not infected. But eventually, people would kill her because they assume that she's infected with the fungus. So the tattoo is very much a means of survival for herself. Also, notice how the tattoo is of plants and growing vines. This is symbolic of this new life that she and Joel have made in Jackson, Wyoming. They have been allowed to settle down, to metaphorically put down roots, grow seeds, grow crops, instead of scrounging the earth for food and scavenging like they were in Season 1. Now, it's also rumored that the events of The Last of Us 2 are going to present it over 2 seasons of this show. So it is possible that some of the shots we see of characters in this might be the Rattlers. These are slave owners who are major antagonists in the game. But again, I don't want to give away too much about the game for you guys who haven't seen it and who want to just watch this amazing show. So we are so excited about The Last of Us Season 2. What did you think of the trailer? Is there anything that we missed? Let me know down in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.